I want to teach people the process that their brain should go through in order to investigate why something's wrong. It's easy to pay me and hop in and be like, oh, that. But you're here to learn about how to do that. Like we always said, like kind of how to think like Caden and think like John. So when we're looking at the traffic to say, okay, why did your company lose half of its revenue in 5 months, or actually 4 months from May to September? We have to look at what ended up happening from a total user base, because that's obviously people are not buying. Is there less people? Are the people worse? So first thing, let's just look at are the people
Offer
that are
changes, anything like that. Yeah.
exactly. Like let's look at the first thing, because apparently the client's like, no, we hired you, and I run the Google, you run, or I run the Meta, John Moran, you run the Google, and things are just been getting worse. So I said, well, I know what I'm doing, but I don't know what you're doing. So let's just take a look at everything. First thing I look at, obviously, is it's going to be the conversion rate, because if spend is high and the sales flatline, this would start to tank. So if spend high and less sales, that's conversion rate. Very simple. So what we can establish here is that the health of the site and the users getting to the site, the ones who do, seem to be no difference than our best performing month. It's actually better. So then the next thing we have to look at is, okay, well, what else is it? What else could it be? There was a company called Raw Juicery. And Raw Juicery is a fantastic company that sells a lot of times juice cleanses. And so this is going to be a business building and MMM and a multimedia mix modeling and paid media spends all like kind of enrolled into one.
It's what you need to know to keep your job. It's what it really comes down to. This is what you need to know to keep your job in the future that's future-proof.
And grow your client. Not only keep your job, but be more successful at it. So this company here came to me and said, John, Google performance is fairly poor. And that happened in September. And they're right. In September, compared to May, which is their best month compared to their worst month, they said, hey, after engaging you, geez, look at our business. It's down 45%. Customers down 48%. Our return customer sale spiked up 45%, which is also my first clue. But down 63% in new customers and down 23% returning. Like, this is hurting. And so I started to look at some things and said, well, there's some outliers here. First thing we look at in any sort of MMM modeling where we know that the client is held up primarily by paid media, TikTok, Google, YouTube, doesn't matter, Facebook, Instagram, blah, blah, blah. Insert paid media channel here. First thing I look at is, okay, if the company is tanking, let's look at the conversion rate. Okay, that's the first thing that we want to look at is the traffic health. So when we look at conversion rate, everything's fine, right? Okay, now
so we think.
Well, it is. If the conversion rate is accurate, like that's
indicator of some other underlying issues, but I don't want to jump ahead.
Yeah, well, actually, we're going to go through this like kind of role play. I want to teach people the process that their brain should go through in order to investigate why something's wrong. It's easy to pay me and hop in and be like, oh, that. But you're here to learn about how to do that. Like we always said, like kind of how to think like Caden and think like John. So when we're looking at the traffic to say, okay, why did your company lose half of its revenue in 5 months, or actually 4 months from May to September? We have to look at what ended up happening from a total user base, because that's obviously people are not buying. Is there less people? Are the people worse? So first thing, let's just look at are the
offer
people that
changes, anything like that. Yeah,
exactly. Like, let's look at the first thing, because apparently the client's like, no, we hired you, and I run the Google, you run, or I run the Meta, John Moran, you run the Google, and things are just been getting worse. So I said, well, I know what I'm doing, but I don't know what you're doing. So let's just take a look at everything. First thing I look at, obviously, is it's going to be the conversion rate, because if spend is high and the sales flatline, this would start to tank. So if spend high and less sales, that's conversion rate. Very simple. So what we can establish here is that the health of the site and the users getting to the site, the ones who do, seem to be no difference than our best performing month. It's actually better. So then the next thing we have to look at is, okay, well, what else is it? What else could it be? That tells a bigger story. So the people that have gotten to the site they are very healthy. It just looks like there's a lot less of them. So if you take an average of your good conversion rate, but you subtract 59% of its sales, that means that you should probably have about 52-ish% less conversions because you have 60% less, but 10% better performance. So offset it by a margin of 2% for error, about 52-ish. And then we look up at the top and we're about 49. Okay, that's tracking about right. 45 less orders, 48% less gross, 49% less net, and from the highest amount of new traffic. Okay, so we know that we have a traffic issue. So let's look at the traffic. Okay, so Facebook and Instagram are down 58 and 86%. That could be
a lot less traffic coming from some source. I don't know.
That could be an issue. That could be an issue there. So then I said, well, he said the Google traffic's bad. So let's just look at everything in tandem. And funny enough, and I love this gentleman. I would never disparage him. And I'm not saying that he even made an accusation at all. He just said Google's looking bad. I was like, well, buddy, have we seen everything else? Because Google's down 50%, yes. But Facebook's down 68, Instagram's down 85, Klaviyo's down 54, which is 4 basis points higher than paid search. If your email's worse than your search,
wow.
Yep. Yeah. And then even Bing is like, I don't know, like, because Bing is just the Me Too network. So it's like if you pull Facebook, Bing just goes down.
I got $1,000 in spend and I can't go past it.
Yeah, I mean, they still deliver 7K, which is how much organic traffic is coming from other channels, which is so funny. But yeah, like that's down. Okay, all right, got it. So then we look and say, all right, so now we know that Facebook.
I will say, just side note real quick, is that the glaring fact though is that yes, the main channel that's driving all the revenue is down. So Google traffic is bad, but yeah, you don't know if that's the actual cause of. Well, yeah, it's not the actual cause of what's going on in the account.
Yep, and you can kind of see the discrepancies here. So it's like, yes, I have the sales are down 46% here, and from Google from the referrer, and also sales attributed to marketing is down 50. So this tells me that my paid and my organic are suffering. Well, very little time do you have that much less inbound organic or paid that results in that much inbound less organic. Those two aren't in line. You can shut off Google Ads and still have 90% of your organic. That is something that we have to use as a rule. So if I stop paying for Google traffic, will it still flow in? Typically, yes, less because you're just missing the return from paid. But those two going down in the same area, Now I have T-ROAS goals set, which is why once it hits those kind of really, really terrible, like 40, 60% T-ROAS, it just bounces off. And I knew that I was losing traffic, but I've been keeping the CPA and the NCAC in line. Now, because we measure by NCAC and not by media spend, our NCAC was actually flat the whole time, kind of thing. Like it was in Google, like it looked fine, which is why I knew that there was definitely some softening, but this is my first year with them, or I guess I would say first like 6 months with them. But in the other part, they didn't have any historical preferences. This is a fairly large company. So they're still 86% over where they were last year. So it's fairly new company. So it's didn't really have a lot of historical preferences. So the last 30 days, when I would compare that to the previous year, like, yeah, I understand that, this month is looking bad. We're still 53% up year over year. We're normally like 400% up though. So that's where it's like all of a sudden it was like they grew really big and then they shrunk really fast. But where they started and where they shrunk really fast is still 50% better. But so we're like, okay, so we don't have economies of scale and efficiencies in reverse. What that means is that if you spend more, you make more faster. Typically that in reverse means you spend less, you make less faster, which means I can chunk off a whole bunch of my ad spend and not really lose that much because I was overspent.
Gotcha.
Because of the fact that they pulled 50% out in the last 30 days compared, or let's just say last 30 days compared to May, what this tells me is when they pulled out all that spend, it wasn't that they were overspent or they're now just underspent, but the same efficiency. Instead of 100 people coming in and 50 buying, they brought in 25 and 12 bought. Like you still get the same conversion rate. You just have less volume. So I said, hey, what are you doing in Meta? I have to ask because Meta is down like in the 75 and 85% range of reduction. I know that you called out Google traffic, which is, yes, down 50%, but let's first take a look at what's down 80%. He goes, yeah, we pulled back Meta because the CPA looked bad. I'm like, bingo, that's where we messed up. In platform CPA was in the 120. And they're like, we really want to be in like the $80 or $90 NCAC.
With or without CAPI?
They don't do CAPI.
Okay.
Yeah. So unfortunately, that's what we're also going into. So this is me just running Google. He built a CAPI, but it's not edge tag. It's based off of like server imports. So we were using some misnomer data. But even after he did that, he didn't measure it differently.
Gotcha.
He just said, "Hey, I won't count all customers. I'll count new customers. Wow, that's high. Let's pull back."
Gotcha.
That happened consistently though, and it was death by 1,000 customers, which is why it was hard to identify. So if you look at the last 365 days, you can kind of see where it started in May. So the returning traffic or returning customers started to decline here, but the new customers, I mean, if you look at the differences between these points here, these points and these 2 points and these 2 points, healthy delta, very good in between new versus returning. Now this delta here was still fairly tall. The delta of returning is still fairly tall. It is shrinking a bit for sure, but not as much as the delta of the new. So as we graph this out, we can kind of see, okay, what happened to new? New just tanked. Now we're spending less, they're converting just as much, and we pulled out about 60% of our ad spend, and we felt new customers drop off. What would be the first recommendation you'd make?
What's the probability that Meta is causing it? Well, it's definitely greater than Google. So I'd lean into saying, okay, let's probably scale back up Meta because that was the cause of what we're seeing.
Yep.
Line it up with the time and the ratio of difference in scale.
Yep. So, and exactly right. So what I asked him to do is I said, hey, if I pulled 10% out, but you pulled 50% out, we're 50% down. Okay, let's start to chart this a bit. Hey, if you like this video, we have a school community where we have a few hundred members and we cover topics, everything from the basics to all the way to the like hyper crazy advanced stuff that's like coming out next month. So a few hundred members there. We go live twice a week, something with an hour-long education about something that is very relevant to the community that week, plus a weekly Q&A where you just get to come and bring us all of your problems and we solve them one at a time.
So I have a link below in the description if you want to join. And then obviously if you have any questions, feel free to reach out and we can answer those for you. And we'll see you in there.